Middlefield to Atherton, and then crossing Atherton, or from Atherton down Stockbridge, Selby to Selby Lane School. And that's a difficult, even though it's straightaway, but it's difficult in that there's a lot of different elevations kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
about Selby. Selby was supposed to be on one of us.
Yeah, I would have to say, and, you know, I think that the highest or a very high probability of getting assistance would be that stretch on Middlefield Road. But with that being said, if we go ahead and implement, go ahead and do it, but yet we don't have a grant in place or somebody that wants to participate with us, then we may end up with that whole project. But if we start with other projects that are surrounding that and connecting into the schools, versus, and waiting for, hopefully, or using that as an option, once we have a potential grant to assist us with the Middlefield, then we jump on that project.
Well,
it seems to be a bigger project than Middlefield.
yeah,
That's a big project.
I think that if we were gonna go after a grant, we need to plan what ones we want to grant. You know,
Right.
go after. And personally, I think Selby is one that we would like to, it should be a grant opportunity.
Yeah.
Because it's taking North Fair Oaks, Redwood City kids,
Yeah.
as well as some Atherton, minimal Atherton, but, and it's a very, very narrow street. That would be a grant opportunity. You know, I don't, because of the number of accidents that we've had on Middlefield, I just don't think that it's prudent for us to forget that or say, hey, we'll wait and see if we get a grant for it. I agree with you that tying into, maybe you take it down as far as the high school or something like that, but I would go all the way down to Willow if I could, or at least try and get Menlo Park to pick up their portion, but 17 accidents there. You know, it just says that it's a problem.
I have a question. How much money is in the general fund that's unallocated?
Between 4 and 5 million.
Okay, so I don't think that we should look at this and limit ourselves to $500,000, which we've already allocated, because we've got 4 or 5 million that we haven't allocated. That's, you know, we've got, it's not like money that's just coming in, it's money that's sitting there that's not in the reserve, it's excess of the reserve. We can use it for capital improvement projects. That has been our stated intention. This is a critical capital improvement project. I really feel strongly that we should take on a issue with the bike path and pedestrian path that people can see and go, we've done a good job, we want to do that elsewhere in the town. And I think Middlefield is the most important. It is the most visible. It's true, it is going to connect to North Fair Oaks and it's going to connect to Menlo Park, and I'd like staff to think about, well, okay, what does that mean? Can we work out some deal with the county and with Menlo Park to get some help for this? I'm prepared to say, let's do the study and go for it, because I think it's an important, and I don't want to just, there's some questions I have about in the staff report about it, but I like it. I like the project.
Can I make?
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to tie into, because you're thinking, you're saying, I heard you say from Fair Oaks to Greenwood, but what is, I mean, in Redwood City, the North Fair Oaks, Middlefield rejuvenation plan, how can we tie into that? And I think we don't stop at Fair Oaks. We try to tie in all the way into Redwood City, because that rejuvenation of that section, because then you could go all the way into downtown Redwood City, all the way that. So if you, that is a big project, and you're taking
And they're already
Redwood
doing
City,
a lot of it.
the county, and Menlo Park, and that's what we need to look at. There's another meeting for their
North Fair Oaks forward.
is it October 23rd?
So, somewhere in there.
Something like that?
Yeah, they're pretty much settled on the 3-lane.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna announce.
But they're obviously gonna have bike.
Oh, they said they're bike lanes and they're gonna widen their sidewalks.
Absolutely. So
Take away
that,
parking.
I think, is a brilliant idea.
Take away
They're not parking, directly parking.
No, yeah.
Integrate the parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just have more room, right, once you get whatever.
Well, yeah, but
fit.
so we have to, design it so that when it comes into Atherton from Palmer up there to Marsh and then, you know, on down, because it will widen up once you get after Marsh.
Totally.
And we need to get the
And
county to kick in their portion.
The county, and then even into, you know, Menlo Park to Palo Alto's border, to the creek.
So just to clarify, is that something I keep hearing, is getting them to participate financially. They're not gonna participate financially in Atherton.
Yeah.
If they're participating financially, it's
And
in their
part.
jurisdictions for
Right.
connectivity.
Yeah, we don't wanna have, as Rick
But-
said, we wanna
Okay.
have something that goes
Yeah,
there and then
right.
there's nothing there for 3
Exactly,
years.
exactly.
Right.
But the
Okay, it
thing-
doesn't help.
But when I see the grants being given through CK and
They're more
NTC,
cooperative.
they are
collaborative.
more cooperative if you're doing it jurisdictional, you know,
Connection,
connecting and
Right.
everything. And I think this is a great opportunity. I'm glad we kind of expanded on that, Rick. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
agree with, so if I understand it, our first step
Mhm.
is to do a study, right? We have to do it, am I right? I
A
mean,
design,
engineering.
a design and
Yes.
engineering,
It would, actually, music to my ears. I mean, what I'm hearing is,
because you're an engineer.
because I'm an engineer, of course, but what I'm hearing from the council is really borne out with the master plan. Master plan, and where I thought you were going originally is, Middlefield's so important, let's not do anything on anything else and do Middlefield.
Yeah.
And which you could do. There's, the consultant report indicates that to do Middlefield end-to-end in Atherton is about $2 million worth of work. Obviously, beyond your currently budgeted, so, you know, should you wish to use more money, fine. Or should we be successful in getting the grant, it would be wonderful. But hearing that the council's significant interest in Middlefield, step one would be to engage an engineering firm to do the preliminary design. And that's where you get the real detail. Not only that, but once you have preliminary design, much like we did with a little bit more work on the grant we did before, then as grant opportunities come up, you have a firm that you can say, here's another $8,000, put the grant application together, take it to 50% plans, and then when the funding agencies see something, because believe it or not, they like to spend their money. So when they see something that it's underway, the environmental work is underway, and you can get shovels, it'll be shovel ready in a year, the probability of getting the grant goes up significantly.
And they're gonna require some matching funds anyway.
Anyway, that's right.
And and they're gonna count what we're doing there.
Yes. Well, not if you've already spent it,
Yeah.
they
That's-
But
would,
it doesn't matter.
but believe me, I mean,
Okay, I get that.
engineering is cheap. Of the overall project, preliminary engineering is like 2% of the value of the project. I'm not saying we're cheap. I'm just saying the work itself is, as a portion of the overall, the construction is big, engineering is small, and preliminary is even smaller.
Well, I would think that, so I'm all in favor of looking at this, okay? And I know that you said we're already looking at this. But we shouldn't ignore these other areas that if you look at these maps, they show very clearly that they're what they tell the bicyclists to use. And so one of them, for example, is Atherton Ave, okay? Another one is Watkins, which is very important to our kids going, and it's a dangerous
It's
place.
a very dangerous spot.
Yeah.
Very dangerous.
So I would hope that we could do not just an engineering study on this, and I would hope we could do an engineering study there, we could look all the way through Fair Oaks down Atherton Ave, and then look on the Alameda for the kids down there that have to go to school over at Woodside Road, or at Woodside.
I would say one of the options, as I started to talk earlier, one of the options you have would be to pick several projects and go for preliminary engineering on all of them. Because it's a very modest cost. You'd be moving several projects, you could, if you choose that, you'd be moving several projects forward, and you'd be getting better information on the actual cost. They may estimate a project at $600,000, and they find out because of some grade issue or something else that it's actually $900,000. Having that information would better inform you. So I'm certainly not advocating only Middlefield. Certainly what I'm hearing is we want to move forward with preliminary engineering on Middlefield so that we have better information, we're poised to move forward, and we may be better positioned for grants. And I think Councilmember Whitmer is suggesting there may be several others that, all of which, because the Safe Routes to Schools issues that, that they looked at, it was Valparaiso, it was Middlefield, it was Alameda de las Pulgas, Selby Lane, and where else? You know, the Austin section.
Well, then we.
Because that's-
So you can do all of those
Austin
preliminarily.
to
Right.
Atherton Avenue, and then through, what,
Excuse me.
Elena and Isabella
Right.
and, you know, Emily. I mean, that's very circuitous, and that's incredibly dangerous.
Right, you could do all, if you only said do preliminary engineering, you could do all of those in terms of the funding. Now, when it came to construction, or even the next step of going to design, then you might say, well, here's our priority, do, you know, this one first, this one second, this one third. Because once we go to design, because standards change over time, if you finish the engineering design of a project, it's done based on the standards adopted at that moment. If you waited 4 years, let's say, you might find you have to redo the plan somewhat, because Caltrans, I mean,
Yeah.
they even mention it in here, Caltrans is considering changes in their standards. So I would say, you know, fine, do the preliminary engineering, take it up to what we call 35%. You might pick then 2 or even 3 projects to go to 65%, and then you might pick in order because of construction cost. Do it first as this segment of Middlefield, then next as maybe this segment of Middlefield. Maybe you want to leave a segment of Middlefield out because it has the highest probability of getting a grant, or you may say, you know, we're okay, we'll spend our money on that area and try and get grant funding for another piece. But
What would the cost of engineering, of doing the Middlefield, Alameda, Selby, Valparaiso was already underway, I don't know how much more we can do, and Watkins, what, you know, what's your estimate?
can I use my first lifeline and call a friend here?
Yeah.
You know, at this point, what I would use is just a percentage of the estimated construction. We have the estimated, and what I would use for rough ballpark budgetary is probably 10%.
Okay, so we're talking, probably,
Yeah, 600,000, are we talking the 6
Did
million or
you say
the 12
10%
million?
of the construction cost?
10% of the construction of those segments.
Those segments.
Of
yeah, the segments,
Okay,
it's less than
so they're all
600,000.
broken
Oh,
out.
yeah.
300,000.
It's
3 to 4. It's
2 million. Yeah, I mean, remember, the 6 million was everything except El Camino Real. So you know, that's where the 600,000 would be that, but if you wanted to cut back, to just doing preliminary engineering, what, maybe half of that at this point? I mean, 300,000 would be, you know, would give you all of that information that Councilmember Whitmer is talking about. You could cut back further if you wanted to, certainly. In fact, I think you would, because Valparaiso is already underway, so that's $1 million project right there. So now we're looking at 5 million, so 500,000, half of that would be, say, $250,000. And for that, we would attract a significant number of, you know, civil and traffic engineering firms that would focus on it and be able to get excellent work.
Yeah, then you would have money left over still.
Right, for
To do
implement-
certain things, like I know we've already done the Marsh Road, you know, with the signage at Middlefield and Marsh, which is good. But we could do some of this signage thing that we're talking about down in your area, where the people want to see, please direct us through your town. You know, to
Right, you certainly, if you only spend 250,000, you would have sufficient funds left over to implement some of the class 3 bike lanes or bike boulevards, and to go to the, you know, to the next step on design, perhaps, on something else. And you might even have enough to do a segment of, you know, a small segment of Middlefield, for example. Like they have, if I may just,
We're not limited to the 500,000, but can staff handle that?
Workload,
Yeah.
well, we would be using some internal, some external, and yeah, we could.
Okay, and
Move those things along.
let's say we agreed to do the preliminary engineering on 5 projects. One, all of Middlefield, Atherton line to Atherton line, one, the Watkins and Park issue, and one Fair Oaks and Atherton and Selby line. Say we chose 5, would we use one engineering firm, or would we use multiple engineering firms?
Probably multiple.
One.
One, you wanna use one?
Yeah.
I would suggest one.
Yeah. Can I ask
It's
a
easier to
quick
manage.
question?
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? Okay, getting back to the Middlefield connectivity through North Fair Oaks and Redwood City to Palo Alto, you know, because that's exciting to me to do that, but if we do this study, we're only doing it in our borders. that our engineers would not consider anything
Well,
on the
Other
other,
than connectivity.
so how would that work?
here's what I said, we would work with Ellen Barton at CCAG, we would work with
Yeah.
Menlo Park, but we do that now. I mean, that's just, it's part of the work to make sure, because in their design, that, you know, you don't want, the proverbial railroad
Right,
tracks that go like that.
Right.
So, but they would not do any design, but they do have to do, they would have to look at the connections, because you have to design the transitions to be
So
safe.
what if they have no connections? I mean, then,
That's a policy decision on the part of the council, but sometimes, and I know I did this in Montecito, Los Gatos, and Saratoga, once we got started to do something, the other communities said, well, if you're doing that, then we'll do this.
but this is something that our mayor coalition, our mayor is going to start meeting with our neighborhood mayors that you're gonna talk about, right? And our supervisor, in the county area,
Hey, this is what we're doing, by the way, and we'd
okay?
like you to be
Heads
part
up,
of it.
and we wanna.
I find that very exciting, but also the fact that, we're gonna look at other connected things through our city, in the city of
Well, we could say if we're going to do it and we're working on the timing, we'll prioritize it if the timing matches your timing, and they may say, yeah, that's great, so.
What your timing to match our timing, so
Or
come on
whatever.
board, get on board.
Yeah, so, I think that the discussions there, I think might, as you said, move them forward.
Yeah, all right. Valerie, would you like to step in and show what you did then?
Yes, I don't know if I missed anything, but you did a little test patch of bike lane right around Marsh and Middlefield, and I don't know whether there's been a report on how successful or any kind of comments. I looked on the website to see if there was a place to enter comments, and there really wasn't, and I think that should be made available so that people who like it or don't like it could comment in on it. But I'm really concerned that although engineers are great, we have a flat road on Middlefield that passes 3 schools at the minimum, maybe more, without bike lanes that are really visible. Darkness is gonna start hitting the school year in a couple months, and we could go a couple more years based upon the way this direction is going before anything is done. And why can't we just continue that striping with the green all the way down Middlefield? How much is that gonna cost us to make those bike lanes more clear and discernible before we get into grade and elevation and engineering and multi-million-dollar projects? I mean, why can't we make our bike lanes visible as a first?
Let me just respond to your, I think the striping on Marsh Road at Middleville is great.
We've had very positive
I
comments.
love it. I drive that way a lot, like 2 or 3 times a day.
I love it too.
I love it. I think it's great, and I think the bicycles love it. They, you're much more aware of them, and they come, and then they go right into the line of traffic. They're not up on the, berm to do the crosswalk. I love
It's
it.
good, it's good.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject a little bit. I am probably of a little bit of a different mind versus spending a lot of money on assessing a big picture, which may be 4 separate projects, versus the focus on a singular, because of the time frame and the potential changes that could happen related to going back. I don't want to spend money that we're not going to accomplish the goal. So if we're going to study Selby, I want to do Selby. If we're going to study Middlefield, I want to do Middlefield. I don't want to do a whole bunch of studies and piss away a whole bunch of tax dollars and have no results. I mean, to me, it's bad in general. But I am very supportive of tackling the Middlefield Road and accomplishing that goal and having some success, and still seeing how the engineering firms that are providing us that information, and maybe going on to a second project, but we're cheering out the 4 projects. I want to see us accomplish, study, but move forward instead of analyzing, thinking about it, doing one project, and then by the time we get around to another project, how long did it take us to work on the channel? I'm sorry, but it was frankly a long time. So I do want to see us having positive results like Valerie just mentioned. Let's get it done, analyze it, study it, accomplish it, move on, then have our next phase, next
So I
level.
think strike what you got.
Yeah, right, something
To
quick.
make it better because the kids are in school and it is getting dark.
Yeah,
As
some,
opposed to make it proper.
and do a good job so that people in the town recognize it as a real benefit, that then the residents will be supportive of the other projects that we decide to take on. No,
I think you're
let me
saying
just
two
say,
different things. I think you're
to
saying
answer
two different things.
to Valerie, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that any project that we take on, we have to do this preliminary engineering work
Oh,
for
yeah.
it. So we can't just decide to go out there tomorrow and start striping, we gotta do the engineering work. So
That gives
Not
us.
so much.
I don't think we could
No, that-
restrike without
If,
it.
Yes,
if we
yes,
are
uh-huh.
restriping, painting, changing, improving, redesigning, correcting, anything like that, we need a design, engineered design to do that. We just can't go out and paint. If we just go out and paint, and God forbid somebody does have an accident, all your money's at stake.
Yeah. We
So,
won't go there.
okay, so that was my point.
Yeah.
So, I think we should absolutely start on the Middlefield project. I think it's a great project for us. Personally, I'm fine to do the preliminary engineering on a couple more projects, and the reason I feel that way is, if we have done that and there becomes a grant opportunity, then we've already kind of got a leg up on it. I agree with Carrie that I don't want to do the preliminary engineering work unless we feel like it's something we would want to do. So I don't want to just do it because, you know, it looks like a good thing to do.
Put it on the shelf.
4 of them as opposed to doing, there's about 12 projects,
Right.
15 projects in the total study.
Well,
Not-
I would
not
recommend-
doing all of them.
I'd recommend we prioritize them 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah,
So we really focus on what the key priority is, and I'm okay to do more than one,
and if they
but
could
I'd
be
like to prioritize
connected
the first
in
4 or
some
5.
way, shape or form, so they're not spot, throughout the,
Yeah, the only one that's not a connection, I think, is Watkins.
Watkins.
And I think, but I think for
It's
Atherton,
connected to Middlefield.
yeah, so, but I think that's gotta be a priority because that's a high use and a very dangerous road the way it's orchestrated.
Well, also, there's the issue of, when we go across the park, we want to do it prior to the Little League field.
Oh, yeah, well, I thought that was already in place. or-
What's that?
Underground.
Little League's in place.
There's actually, if I may, there's sort of 2 park projects. One is the path going to Felton Gables,
Yeah.
of which part of it's gonna be going in, and some of it may be widened by Little League. The other one is parallel to the park, kind of parallel to Watkins,
Right, yeah.
where they're suggesting in their estimate, and I don't know if it's high or low, is about $500,000, and that would be essentially to, either cantilever or go over the channel, which has some environmental issues to it, but it'd be taking a portion of Watkins and putting in a trail, so, and that's the,
On hold for a while.
yeah, and so other than that, I mean, most of the others are
That
much
should be
less
on hold for a
expensive.
while.
Well, in the staff report, the item that is subtitled Holbrook Palmer Park Path
Yeah.
says from Watkins to Menlo Park, which I assume means Felton Gable.
Correct.
So that's going from Watkins. The Little League is picking up, I guess, the cost from the Little League field to Felton Gable Gate.
You just gotta go from the tennis courts to the gate.
To the
And you
gate.
gotta
But
do
that's-
that
but
quickly because it's gonna start
No,
raining.
but this proposal is from Watkins.
Well, that's the path closure the connector from Felton Gables to the existing path. We're talking about making that a bicycle route, which it's
I
not
understand.
present.
It's not
I understand.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, it's not coming down Watkins, this
Right.
proposal.
That's right, they're
It's
two.
going
That's in
from
the park.
Watkins to the gate.
But today, the biggest need of that in the park is, and Valerie, you're building on that as well, is going from the edge of the tennis courts. I mean, you go up on that little,
No,
where the
no,
handball court is, and then
It's not
behind
safe.
it, it's all dirt.
Yeah.
And, in addition to no visibility and things like that, when it rains, the kids slide and fall off their bikes because it's gonna get muddy. So the quickest thing is to do that 30 or 40 feet. And a secondary thing would be widening the road so that people can walk and bicyclists. But today the bicyclists are
Widening
going
the
anyway,
path.
the path, yeah. But today the bicyclists are on it, there's not been any major issue that I'm aware of.
other than they're not currently permitted.
I was just gonna
We
say,
didn't-
per
you
this
know,
section.
So we gotta fix that component.
Well, we fixed that component, but putting down the asphalt that goes from
Right.
one location
That's
to the
underway.
gate needs to be done, yeah.
Is it underway in engineering?
Yes,
or
it's
is-
it's been engineered, we're working with the contractor to get the timing on that.
Okay,
Right,
Before the paving and timing.
okay,
right.
all right.
Well, I recommend we try to prioritize these different
Yeah,
projects,
absolutely.
and
Well,
to the extent we wanna,
do we take action?
No,
Yeah,
you're
but I
providing
think it's
direction.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think staff has kind of heard, obviously, Middlefield being,
Yeah, what I'm hearing is moving forward with Middlefield being first, and that's by far the largest dollar cost of, when you add all the pieces up, it's about $2 million. And then I also have Atherton Avenue, and by the way, Atherton there's two parts of that project. One is, the short term is probably a class 3, which is just signage. Over time, if the council were to choose to do that, they're recommending possibly class 2, which means widening Atherton Avenue, widening the paving.
Mhm.
It's a longer,
With
you
this
could say do it tomorrow, but
The
they're
design
proposing
could
it.
incorporate
Right.
all of that.
You
so
can,
would the
Yes.
preliminary study be for both?
Yeah.
at the council's direction. Certainly, we want to have it be the class 3 now, but yes, if they're out there, they could design, do the preliminary design of the class 2, give you some cost estimates, indicate what environmental issues there might be. So yes, we could do that. Watkins Avenue, which, as I mentioned, they're gonna have to look at widening somehow. That will be a longer term. I would suggest that probably, let's say Middlefield 1, Atherton 2, maybe Selby 3, Fair Oaks 4, and Watkins 5.
So where's the connectivity? So
And
you've got Middlefield and Atherton Avenue, are you gonna do Fair Oaks?
Well, you've got Station Lane, I mean, we're gonna do
Through
Station Lane, only do the
Watkins?
civic.
So you
Yeah,
go
that's gonna be-
Middlefield, Watkins, Station Lane to Atherton?
So my priorities are different. I like what Elizabeth is saying about connectivity, I think. So I really feel strongly that we need to have examples that people can see and not just little pieces that are disconnected. I think Middlefield should be one. I mean, I'm open,
Selby Lane is another, well, they're doing the Val Plaza, which is a connector. So you got Middlefield, Selby Lane is one where I think that really, if you're gonna go get a grant and be engineered to do a grant, that is a perfect location because of the school area, because of the ethnicity of the area.
Selby, yeah.
probably
So,
true.
but
Probably
Selby
true.
then, the connectivity would be either through Selby Lane or through Austin,
or,
okay, or what?
well, or working with
El Camino.
North Fair Oaks down Fifth Avenue.
You go Fifth Avenue to
To the
Middlefield,
Middlefield.
right. Boy, that's a tough one. That, don't you think?
Yeah.
Where Middlefield veers
we're
off
doing
on Fifth
Middlefield.
Avenue.
Yeah.
No, but Fifth Avenue, you cross over El Camino to get to Selby. That's a tough one.
I don't know.
That's not even a
My
dashed
second
line.
priority would be Watkins. It
Which
connects-
one?
Watkins, it connects to Middlefield, I like the connectivity.
Watkins to,
Well,
You know,
I mean,
Watkins is very safe though, relative to
we
Fair
all.
Oaks.
Watkins is safe?
Oh, Fair Oaks is
great,
not,
there's
oh, yeah.
visibility.
Well, it's got that
Fair Oaks-
lump though, it's got that lump, if there's pedestrians in there
I
and
think
somebody's
either
riding
Fair
on
Oaks
the
or
outside.
Watkins, I like something that connects to
That
what
hump
we're
is
talking about
terrible,
doing
but-
on Middlefield.
Fair Oaks is,
So-
Fair Oaks is
On
dangerous.
the side of the street, and no, you're gonna miss
So keep in mind,
Well, they can see you, yeah.
so keep in mind, you're gonna have a civic center project that's going to be in play, in the next, within,
No.
and we do wanna be careful on how much action you're gonna be putting into an area that we're going to be developing a civic center.
Also Station
They
Lane.
don't wanna do something to tear it up.
Right. So in essence, I agree, Middlefield seems to be pretty obvious as a one. Although I would agree to the connectivity with Watkins, but I don't agree with the timing. So I would rather see a Selby Lane issue because that would also tear into a future project, i.e. the intersection of ECR and Selby. So then we'll have connectivity into ECR, that being a thought, and then coming back and saying either Watkins or Atherton as being.
Or do Atherton Ave because it is a major bike
What
thoroughfare.
about Fair Oaks?
Fair Oaks was not on our list, but I would think that because of the
It's on
fact,
the list. It's always on the
well, it's on the list, but I would think that once the Civic Center, that issue's done, because that's gonna be our commercial input to the Civic Center, period. So once the Civic Center design is done, then I think that that could be clearly a redone section of the roadway. Please.
My name's John Lowry, and I live on Atherton Avenue just by coincidence.
Thank you.
And I've jogged down there for 25 years
Yeah.
and seen the change in the traffic. I would be prepared to make a donation to the town to build a demonstration project in front of my house to help
Where do you
with
live?
the project, 66,
Wow.
just after the turn.
Just have to
Oh,
turn.
Fair Oaks?
Yeah.
On
The
Atherton.
Atherton Avenue.
66,
Just
after the turn.
And I think that there would be other homeowners in some of these areas that would be willing to donate to help encourage these projects. Because the nature of our community has changed over the last 25 years. Atherton Avenue was a rural street when we moved here.
Yeah,
It's now a thoroughfare.
yeah.
And we haven't recognized that it's the same old place as it was 25 and 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So as I say, I'd be prepared to cooperate and work with the town to help the demonstration along Atherton.
I mean, Atherton Avenue is extremely visible, we all know that.
Yeah.
And I really like Middlefield because of the school connectivity.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Atherton, I really think it's important that whatever we do, that it be very visible to people and that we do a really good job so that people can get behind it.
So why don't we have Atherton Avenue top three?
Atherton
You also
Avenue,
know
Fair
that-
Oaks Lane to Middlefield would be really
Well,
powerful.
right, and then you can connect from Atherton to Selby Lane, either through Austin or Selby Lane, the other Selby Lane, you know?
Yeah, and Austin could be one of those class 3 though.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the proposal for it right now.
Yeah. So you just put, there's a lot of signage and those
Yeah.
shards.
Sharrows.
Sharrows, I call them.
I feel good about making Atherton Avenue
That's-
number 2.
That's really, thank you, that's
I think that's-
Okay.
Well,
And
also,
I think
I'd like to
that
see
your
this.
comment is a really good comment. I agree that there are probably, and maybe others will comment, but there may be other residents on Atherton Avenue that feel the same way. Atherton Avenue, frankly, is a remarkable opportunity for us because it's so wide and it, you know, on one hand, it feels rural because it's wide, but we know it's not because it's such a pass-through road now.
Well, the right of way is considerably wider.
yeah.
No, it's
So
an opportunity for
building
us.
a nice path along.
That's
But
right.
I would like to do the engineering on Selby Lane regardless, because I think that that's a grant opportunity for us. And if we're ready to roll on it, we don't have to implement it, but when we're ready to roll on it, that's probably one of our number one grant.
Number 1, 2, 3, well, I mean, in our list of 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask on that, the one you haven't, well, I've heard some talk about Elena, the connection.
Mhm.
If we're looking at either Selby,
Valparaiso,
Selby or Austin for the, call it the connectivity,
mhm.
we'd probably look at, and we're gonna be looking at Atherton anyway, I would suggest we also look at that connection to get over to Valparaiso, which the consultant suggested was Elena, and then, you know, there may be some other way that you'd wanna do that, but
Barry
yeah,
or.
Barry
Elena.
was one suggestion.
So whatever it
It's
is,
into
this
the
is a Selby Lane to
Right,
Valparaiso.
exactly, and it would,
Which
and,
is-
and as Councilmember Whitmer suggested, maybe it might initially be a class 3 project, which is, the engineering would be relatively low, the implementation would also be low cost.
I agree, because one of the things that I have heard from so many residents who live in what I call that Almondral, Adamway, you know, that central area there between Selby and Austin, they can't have their kids, they can't get their kids over to Sacred Heart. They just can't, you know, because they can't cross Atherton Avenue, you know, they can't ride down Atherton Avenue, and so that's why they have to bring them all the time in their cars. So, I think that is, I think that's
So,
one of our top.
I was gonna say, I think Atherton Avenue is gonna be quite a project. And I think that it's a huge aesthetic project for us as well.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with our current movement to look into this encroachment issue and try to see if we can make the roadway better in a lot of different ways, and still keep part of the character that we're still looking for, and not create a freeway, frankly. So, and I thank you for your very honest look as being a resident on recognizing that we do have some issues. And clearly we want to tackle those issues, but we also want to, and we have a lot of construction going on there, so it's a roadway that we're very sensitive to, but we also know the residents are very sensitive to it as well. So I would probably say, again, you know, that's going to be in our plan as well. I know that we've had some heavy focus on that with the encroachment issues, so we're trying to increase safety at the same time, but also studying it is going to be important for us.
So
Can I
I'm
add
trying
something to this comment about the demo area? Does it make sense to do a demo area? Because I happen to know Fred Brower, who's right next to you, and then the 49 Metro Avenue folks who live across the curb from you. So, I don't know, does it make sense? Is that something that Gordon thinks is going to be a valuable step in this?
Gordon and Mike.
You mean to get residents to?
Like a
potentially-
study section to have people comment on what kind of bike path we're laying?
I
Is
mean,
that what you're talking about?
I mean, how would that work if we
That's
had?
not what he said.
I'm talking about that, but also about actually funding construction.
For that strip of land?
Yeah,
Or
the
section
section
in
in
front
front of
of
his
it.
house.
Okay.
Yeah,
And,
so,
But we don't wanna
we
look
get
at
some
ju-
neighbors like Fred.
so Mike, how, I mean, it's a little unusual because it's really such a small segment. Do we actually get a good feel for how
Can
we,
you do a segment?
I mean, you tell us.
Let me make this. I think that our first priority should be Middlefield from the Atherton city line to the Atherton city line. I think our second priority should be Fair Oaks and Atherton Avenue. This is a preliminary engineering study from Middlefield to Alameda. And we can decide how, let's do the engineering study to look at it, and then we can decide how we want to handle construction after we see that. I don't know if we want to do a little demo piece to show people what it's going to look like. I think we can probably get a workup from, you know, the design firm that can show that, and we can